What is up, our brethren of the Forge? Welcome to a brand new series here on Metal Forge Reviews, where we rank the album of an influential band that we love. For our first episode, we decided to come out fucking swinging and discuss the mighty Floridian death metal gods, Death, and attempt to rank their discography from the worst to the best. In my opinion, there really is no worst, but this is, I don't know, whatever, it's Death. Before we get started, let us know in the comments, what is your ranking for Death albums and why? What record got you into Death? Let us know. If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, hit that sub button if you want more metal coverage like this. We have a ton of other content on this channel in the form of album reviews, top lists, reactions, interviews, and now albums ranked. Thank you for your support. Help us hit that 1,000 sub milestone, and also hit us up on social media. We post tons of content related to our videos. Also, there's a lot of really awesome metal review channels out there. If you haven't checked them out yet, head over to a few of our favorites, which are Metal Trenches, Jamie Horsley, Quest for Metal, Metal Meltdown, Thralls of Metal, Old Head, Brain Smasher, Rauta. Go give those guys a follow. They're doing some fucking awesome and really cool journalism in addition to the big channels out there. Great job, guys. It's been really fun following what you do. We're doing this episode a little differently than other album ranked episodes that we've seen. We're gonna work together, which is not something I've really seen yet on YouTube, but we're gonna work together to come up with a ranking for the Death albums. Individually, we likely have different lists, but I think that the format of working together will inspire a little bit of healthy fucking debate and come up with a list that we are happy with. This episode, we pulled on a good friend of ours, Matt Zappa, amazing drummer, educator, and overall celebrity of the Boston music scene to help us out with the ranking. He's been on the show before, one of our top releases of the month episodes. Be sure to check that out, hear more about his bands and what he does. And he's also a live streamer. Matt, tell us about what you do.
Well, Brandon, Ben, thank you so much for having me on the show again. I've enjoyed everything y'all guys been put out there. And make sure y'all, if you're watching this for the first time, subscribe. I'll wait. Okay, good. Thank you. All right. So, yeah, I play with Protean Collective, Walter Sickert and the Army Broken Toys, Math the Band. I've been doing a lot of work on live streaming since everyone's in lockdown right now. I'm Dr. Matt Zappa on Twitch. I do all kinds of fundraisers for Black Girls Rock. I do all kind of like chiptune like nights. I do metal nights. And if one thing I always love about platforms like that is because you could basically interact with artists that you enjoy. Like as a kid, if Danny Carey, Gene Hoglan were doing like a drum stream, hell yeah, I would love to be a part of that and be able to pick their brains in real time. Fuck yeah. So yeah, I 100% support the platform and support what you guys are doing. Keep the metal strong.
You heard it from the man himself. Make sure you follow him over on his Twitch. He's doing some great, great stuff. So, we will be ranking the Death records by a few factors, and we're just kind of making this shit up as we go along, but let's see how this goes. We're going to be ranking them by innovation, timelessness, and the amount of banger tunes. This will be an experiment. Let's see how this goes. All right, boys, we are talking about the very first Death record. Scream Bloody Gore came out in 1987. I mean, this to me, this one's pretty high up in my list. This is actually one of my favorites. But, I mean, it's got a ton of stuff on here, and you can tell they were onto something really special when it first came out. I personally loved the artwork on this. That's probably my favorite part in addition to the killer records inside. I think the artwork matches the album perfectly. So getting into some of the rankings on here, I actually gave this an innovation of a 9 out of 10, which is super high up there. But given that this was like one of the first albums that it was sort of inventing something completely fucking new, I'm going to give it a really, really high rank there. In terms of timelessness, I mean, I go back to this thing now, 1987, this thing crushes, man. Fucking huge. Amount of banger tunes, 4 for the picks that I have on that: Zombie Ritual, Regurgitated Guts, Evil Dead, and Scream Bloody Gore. So, yeah. Overall score there of a fucking 21. Ben?
Yeah, man, this was really nice to kind of go back and do like a chronological thing, because that's basically how I approach this, is chronologically. So this, I think that you hit everything that I would have said. Really, the album cover is completely tells you, shows you what you're about to get into. Chuck was 20 years old. He was heavily inspired by horror films, and you could tell that he's still finding his footing, but he still displays fantastic songwriting and guitaring. So for innovation, I gave it an 8 out of 10. For timelessness, 8 out of 10, because I think that what you hear in Scream Bloody Gore is what a lot of death metal bands really tried to start to do. And for highlight songs, I'm one behind you. I picked 3 out of 10, Zombie Ritual, Evil Dead, and Scream Bloody Gore. So that gave me a total of 19 out of 30. This is really, to me, like a proto-death metal album.
So I have a lot to agree with both of you on. The artwork, amazing. Like, great landmark album cover. I'm a big fan of that. The innovation for what it was for the time, 100% with you. I gave it an 8 out of 10 for innovation. But here's where we disagree. Like, you guys hold it up in high regard. This is probably actually one of my lower aspects to it. Because to me, Chuck Schuldiner is an amazing vocalist, singer-songwriter, and lyricist. And I feel like lyric-wise, it's not as strong as any of the other releases. But still has a lot of songwriting that you could see the beginnings of what's going to be great. Like, you have Zombie Ritual, Individual Death, I Scream Bloody Gore. I have I have 3 bangers on there, but I feel like it's not the strongest one they've released, but you see a lot that's going to come.
Fuck yeah, man. Totally agree with you there. I mean, that's an interesting take that you just said about how the lyrical content doesn't go up to par with the other albums, and I have to agree with you there, but, Chuck was obsessed with getting the death metal sound, and given it was obsessed with gore, but you know what's even scarier is the human condition and looking inside the mind, and I think that's where we're about to go. So next one we got on here is Leprosy, which came out in 1988. So we're starting to head to the middle albums here, which I think is going to be some of the crispiness of the discussion and a little bit more of the debate here. So the sophomore album here of Leprosy, I think, had a lot of really awesome charm. You could tell that they're starting to do a little bit more with the pre-existing formula, and they're kind of breaking out of that thrash kind of sound, and they're putting, I feel like, the death in death metal, in my opinion. And I think Leprosy had quite a bit of innovation on it, because they were starting to creep out of that thrash metal sound and getting more into a little more of the death metal stuff going on there. So I gave it an 8 for innovation. And timelessness, I kind of gave it a 7, just because this is something that I don't typically go back to all the time. But the banger tunes on here, there's some fucking killer ones. Leprosy, I picked 4. Leprosy, Born Dead, Pull the Plug is one of my all-time favorites, and also Choke on It. You can't forget that song. One of my favorites. So total score, 19.
All right, man. I'm going to go on a completely different path from you on this one. This was my lowest rated album, and I wasn't entirely surprised. Oh, Matt just had an aneurysm. I think that this is really where they start to introduce those driving groove riffs, which makes the riffs feel more chaotic and brutal. And they introduce that mid-pace riffing where the solos, where they rip you to shred and stuff. And it is much tighter musicianship than on Scream Bloody Gore, but for me, I don't know. It doesn't really do it for me as much as Scream Bloody Gore. So with innovation, I gave it a 6 out of 10. Timelessness, a 5 out of 10. I think I would put on almost all of their other albums versus this one. In highlight song, I just picked 1 out of 8. I picked Pull the Plug. I think don't get me wrong, to say that this is my least favorite Death album doesn't really say much, because they're all amazing, but that's kind of where I left with that one.
All right, Ben, I was going to let you finish, but I want to say first to start off that I'm very disappointed in you. And you used to be beautiful, and I loved you.
I'm going to let you finish.
Okay. So Leprosy here. To me, when I was talking about innovation with Scream Bloody Gore, yes, that Scream Bloody Gore has definitely the innovation, but this one to me is when death really became death. You got to see clear eyes of Chuck Schuldinger's songwriting. Like, you have Pull the Plug, their Bohemian Rhapsody, their identifiable song to what death is. And you clearly see his sporadic nature of what he's trying to go for, jumping from riff to riff to riff, in a very jarring, just way to be able to shock your system. Like Leprosy, you have Primitive Ways, you have Open Casket, like all bangers on here. I'm even going to say there's 7 bangers on here. Choke on It, not the biggest fan. I said Innovation 8. Timelessness, I give it 8. Pull the Plug, the most identifiable song to the band. I swear I won't stumble on that again. I could talk, I swear.
Thanks, man. That was, hey, I'm glad that at least with the second album we're getting to a little point of diversion here. This is going to be interesting for the rest of it.
All right, so we're on to the third record, the third one, which is Spiritual Healing from 1990. And this one, in my opinion, is kind of a one-off in their catalog. I have a heart. This is probably my least favorite Death record. I'm just going to go out and say that right now. It's my least favorite, but it's one of my favorite album artworks by far out of all of them. I love the album artwork on this. But I mean, you can feel the turmoil in this record. This was around the time that the band went on tour without Chuck. So there was basically a mutiny kind of going on, and you can kind of feel that in this album. It feels a little disjointed to me, but there's some awesome violence and technicality on this record that is there and that I do enjoy. So for Innovation, I'm going to give it a 6. And for Timelessness, I'm going to give it a 5. And for amount of banger tunes, I gave it 2. Within the Mind is amazing. Love that song. And then also Spiritual Healing, fucking banger song.
Well, I like this album. I do. It has I kind of wish that the bass tone was a little more prominent as far as sonic qualities go. I really like how they introduced more deep kind of human elements, lyrical themes, and things like that. Chuck starts to introduce social issues, and I connect with that more than the horror movie worship and things like that. What I like about this is that there are more diverse vocal patterns and effects, and it also introduces another guitar soloist in James Murphy, which adds a really nice flavor of diversity. So with those things, I gave the Innovation an 8. With the Timelessness, just kind of a hair above Leprosy, with 6 out of 10. And highlight songs, I picked one more than you did, Brandon. I picked 3 out of 8, and I added Altering the Future to your list. So I have Altering the Future, Within the Mind, and Spiritual Healing, which gives me a total of 17 out of 28. Overall, I like this record quite a bit.
All right, so I have to agree on many levels with Brandon. Brandon put it out there as maybe this is probably my least favorite Death record, but probably top album cover style. And I feel like, but I have to agree with you, Ben, that lyrically I feel like this is when Chuck's starting to rise up to become himself, and there was extreme turmoil in the group, and it just didn't feel complete to me in any way. Like Timelessness, I give this one a 5, but for bangers I have to give Spiritual Healing. Killing Sprees has a lot of charm to it. Altering the Future, very much lyrical content. I am 4. But yeah, to me, probably the most forgettable Death record. Don't at me.
Forgettable is not the word that I would use, but I like where this is going so far.
I'm totally going to at you.
No!
Next up on my list, we have my personal favorite, Death's Human, which was released in 1991. It took me a little bit to really wrap my head around this album, but once I did, I absolutely sank my teeth into it. This is the bridge album for me that was overlooked while I was really into Symbolic. And it may not be as timeless as Symbolic, but the innovation on this record really puts it over Symbolic for me. I gave the innovation on this record an 8 out of 10. To me, this is their best lineup. Sean Rayner, Steve DiGiorgio, and Paul Masvidal. Amazing players, amazing musicians, and I love the mature views on the social issues. It really is about the human condition. It loses a couple points for me. It's too damn short, which sucks, but I mean, man, this is an album that I could just sit with over and over and over again. So the Timelessness for me is 9 out of 10. Highlight songs, front to back, complete banger, 8 out of 8. So for me, total 25 out of 28.
Well, Human to me is definitely one of the most innovative albums, and I hold a special place for me because it was my first Death record. And I got turned on to Death because I was a big Cynic fan, and Paul and Sean from them. I'm like, oh, they have another band? They came from this? And I checked it out and just floored by the entire record. So innovative on all fronts. It was basically, you got to hear Chuck, his death metal aspects, getting thrown in with a lot of jazz fusion that was influenced by Sean and Paul. And Steve DiGiorgio, one of the best bass players of all time. Lack of comprehension, amazing banger, Suicide Machine, Thinking Planets, Cosmic Sea. I gotta give this innovation 9, timelessness 8, and bangers, I'm gonna go top way, 8 bangers, 8 tracks. But I do agree with you, it is too short.
So, I mean, now we're starting to get to the top of the list. So Human is just, it's one of the best Death records. I mean, honestly, everyone's going to pretty much agree with that. You guys hit all the main points that I had. I mean, the lineup on this is just not even fucking fair.
like best rhythm section of all time. In metal.
Really, it's not even fair. I mean, it is total history, really, in human form. And I mean, I kind of gave it similar scores. For innovation, I gave it a 9. For timelessness, I gave it an 8. I do love the whole record, but I mean, when I go back, I don't really go back to this record that often. So I have picked 3 songs that I absolutely loved off of this album, which is Flattening of Emotions, Together as One, and then obviously Lack of Comprehension, just because that's one of the best songs ever. So total score 20, including everything. But obviously, Human, massively influential. So the next one we got here, chronologically, is Individual Thought Patterns, which came out in 1993. This is a really awesome record. I mean, it had seemed like Chuck was kind of riding off of that ultimate crew that he had on Human, and it was kind of time to just shake things up even more. And this was the album where we started getting Andy LaRocque, which is one of my favorite guitar players of all fucking time. I mean, absolutely unbelievable guitar player in King Diamond. And then we got Gene Hoglan on this record, which is another legend. So, I mean, although I gave these like kind of smaller scores, for innovation, I gave it a 7, just because there's, you know, it's kind of doing more of the same stuff, but with even more legendary people again. And for timelessness, I gave it a 6. But even those small scores, don't get me wrong, this is such a killer record. For the bangers on this, I picked 3 of them. Overactive Imagination, amazing song. Trapped in a Corner, and then The Philosopher. So total score, 16.
Individual Thought Patterns for me, I thought I was going to score it a little bit lower, but you know, it came out when I listened to it. I was like, all right, yeah, no, this deserves its spot. You said Andy LaRocque. I mean, unbelievable solos. His solos on this album just take this music to a completely different planet. Steve, as amazing as he is, he was just able to achieve a tone that just set a bar in the metal community. While many of the American peers were kind of going for thumpy, gritty tones, Steve carves out a section of the EQ in the sonic landscape and just dominates it. He feels like another guitar player on this album. It's unbelievable. So for innovation, not super innovative compared to their last couple albums, so I gave this a 7.5 out of 10. For timelessness, I gave this a 7 out of 10. I think this is one that I would probably revisit, but not on like a super consistent basis. For highlight songs, I picked 4 out of 10, and for those songs, I picked Overactive Imagination, Trapped in a Corner, Mentally Blind, and The Philosopher. So total for me was 18.5 out of 30, my only half score.
Okay, Individual Thought Patterns to me has so many aspects that have brought Death to the forefront of what metal is today, and Steve DiGiorgio, one of the best bass players of all time, with a song like Philosopher, you have him with fretless bass carrying out a majority of the song. You have Gene Hoglan in there as an amazing percussionist that all drummers need to really aspire to. But for me, this album has the highest lyrical content for me because you have song like The Philosopher where it's the first time I heard someone talk about sexuality in metal, where you preach about how I'm supposed to be, but yet you don't know your own sexuality. That song, Overactive Imagination, Trapped in the Corner, great lyrics. Chuck is the best lyricist of all time in metal to me. I say for innovation, I gave this a 7. For timelessness, I gave it an 8. And for the amount of bangers, I gave it 5. Overactive Imagination, Trapped in the Corner, The Philosopher, Individual Thought Patterns, and Mentally Blind.
Matt, I love that you're touching on something that Brendan and I kind of touch on, but you're getting into a little bit more is the lyrical themes. And I love that you actually brought up a couple lines of lyrics, because Chuck was not only, as we all know, an amazing songwriter, an amazing guitarist, but he was a brilliant poet in his later years. So thanks for bringing that up, man. That's awesome. You're really filling in the gaps where we are leaving them open.
And here we are at one of my favorite metal albums of all frickin' time, Symbolic. This came out in 1995. Our good friend Kenny actually showed me this album, and this album is what got me into Death. So this is part of why, I just love this album so much. It's tied to so many amazing memories and friendship and all that, whatever, lame stuff.
Friendship.
But anyways, there's just so much imagination on this record. And we did get some lineup changes on this. The bassist changed to Kelly Conlon, and then we've got the secondary guitarist, Bobby Coble. We do have Gene Hoglan on drums again, which is, obviously he's absolutely crushing it on this record. You have so much prog going on here, and that's one of my favorite parts. This whole record is just a banger. I gave it, for innovation, a 10, because it's perfect for me. Timelessness, a 10, never sick of it. And amount of banger tunes, pretty much all of them. I picked 6. Symbolic, Zero Tolerance, Empty Words, Sacred Serenity, Crystal Mountain, and Misanthrope.
Brandon, this is also the album that I got into Symbolic as a teenager. My friends, Jeremy, shout out to Jeremy. I hope you're watching this one, because this one, I'm thinking about you a lot on these. He really got me into Death. It's practically perfect in every way, as Mary Poppins would say. It's truly a no-skip record. They keep it very progressive, but it's still accessible. And it's the timelessness of this record that makes it stand out for me, as well as the banger amount of songs. However, it does lose a couple innovation points for me, simply because I thought Human and Individual Thought Patterns were more innovative, and this Symbolic just kind of takes on what they were already kind of doing for that. So innovation, a little lower on the scale for me, 7 out of 10. Timelessness, though, absolutely 10 out of 10. And highlight songs, I picked them all, a 9 out of 9. I just think that every song is flawless on this record. And I think it's just easily, if you're going to get into Death, if you've never heard of them before, I would recommend probably Symbolic.
Okay, this is where you and I differ on this one. To me, Symbolic, I give it a 10 out of 10 for innovation, because it's probably the most copied album in death metal. Symbolic, oh my god, every track to me is a banger. I'm going to give it 9 out of 9 for all the bangers on there. And also Gene Hoglan, Crystal Mountain. That is a pinnacle of what your metal drumming needs to be. You need to get to that level to be able to have that kind of shred that you have on there, but still being able to have such a tight groove, to be able to move the songs forward, to be able to take Chuck's songwriting and move it in this direction like a freight train. It hits on every level. I love it. You guys have said all that needs to be said. We nailed it. 10, 9, 8. Innovation, timelessness, bangers.
We're at the last album to discuss, so I hope you enjoyed this journey. Sound of Perseverance, 1998. This was, I don't know. This one's kind of a weird one for me, because it feels like the band to me has sort of investigated everything that they could say up through Symbolic. So I feel like this record was sort of tired for me. But there's still some great songs on this album, don't get me wrong. But you can tell that this is basically the segue to Control Denied. And that the heart's not there. And that's okay. Every band goes through their blow up phase, and then they come back down, and sometimes there's nothing else to say, and that's fine. But there's some great stuff on here. For innovation, I'm going to go for more of an average score for a 7 out of 10. Timelessness is a 5, but there are a couple of bangers. I picked 2 of them. Spirit Crusher is amazing, and A Moment of Clarity. So total score, 14.
This album, I really agree with you. I think that they do sound, it's not that they sound tired, but they sound kind of like they've done everything that they basically kind of were searching for, really, I guess. So I gave the innovation on this a 6 out of 10, kind of more of an average range. Timelessness, 6 out of 10 as well. This album does have one of my favorites, the Death songs of all time, though, Flesh and the Power It Holds. I believe that was the first Death song I ever heard as like a 12-year-old kid. I downloaded or somehow acquired an MP3, and I was floored when I heard that song. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I don't feel guilty about skipping the Judas Priest cover. It's not really, it doesn't really do it for me. So for the highlight songs, I gave it a 3 out of 9 for a total of 15 out of 29 points.
I'm with you, Ben, on the innovation side. It feels like the band is actually more. That was your Brandon. Like the band's, you could feel them trailing off. Like they don't feel like, it doesn't feel the most connected to me, but it has maybe one of the most dizzying bangers of Death, which is Spirit Crusher. Richard Christy, so underrated as a drummer. People think of him Howard Stern show in his first comedy. Like the ending, going from the chorus to the bridge of Spirit Crusher is just dizzying. Like what, it's hurt my brain so many times trying to analyze. To me, for bangers, there's obviously Spirit Crusher. Flesh holds up strong, and I have to give it for Painkiller because it really got me to understand that Judas Priest is not just a hard rock band. Like, they could be a strong metal band. But Innovation, 6. Timelessness, 7. 3 bangers.
Fuck yeah. So that's all of them. So let's go through what we have for a score. So just want to say that actually went a hell of a lot better than I thought it was going to go. And that was a lot of fun. Wasn't it fucking fun?
Had a blast.
I loved it, man.
Yeah. So we got to do this fucking listing. Are you ready? We're going to win worst to best.
Hit me.
We did our rankings. We tallied them up, and this is what they're going to be. So the worst one is Spiritual Healing. Not surprised. Next one on the list is Sound of Perseverance. Then Leprosy. Then Individual Thought Patterns.
Wow. I didn't know it was going to be that low.
Third one on the list is Scream Bloody Gore. Second one on the list is Human. And number 1 is fucking Symbolic.
Dude.
Hell yeah.
That's an awesome top 3. Seriously.
I'm super happy with how that worked out.
Yeah.
Dude, doesn't at least for me, I just want to listen to more Death again.
Me too. We should all just listen to Death and text each other and just be like, wasn't that a fun thing that we did?
What you listen to? I don't know. Just listen to some Human.
Just some Death.
Me too.
So, what is your ranking for Death Records? Let us know in the comments. This was super fucking fun. Let us know if you want us to do another ranking. Ben, let's close it out.
Yeah, thank you all for sticking with us as we traversed the crystal mountain that is the Death discography. Thankfully, none of us will get leprosy by doing this in a virtual setting. Brandon, I think it's great that you gave a shout out to our colleagues in the metal YouTube community. There are so many great people and teams out there reviewing and talking about metal, and we hope that we are just one in your metal research library. We are excited to bring new segments to the table like this one, along with our classic segments. Brandon checks out Deathcore, Underground Spotlight, video reactions, and our end of the month roundups. We make it very easy for you to browse our videos. Just head over to our main page and navigate through the playlists. We're very active on social media, so reach out to us via Facebook or Instagram, and we want to hear from bands and viewers, so definitely engage with us. As always, a big thank you to our friend and fellow musician, Matt Zappa. It's always a pleasure chatting with you, man.
Yo, thank you so much for having me, guys. Like I said, I'm super proud of what you guys are doing and giving your time, your energy to the metal community in a time where bands really need it right now, really need that support. And yeah, keep doing what you guys do.
Thanks, man. And thank you for your time. Leave us a comment. We'll catch you on the flip side. Take care.